£1,200. Any further bids, all done at £1,200. Your bids are 1,292. 9,250. 66,000, thank you. It's sold at 180,000. Thank you very much, sir. 102. Well done, sir.
7 a.m., a cold winter morning at a Kensington Mews. These cars have begun a journey from one owner to another, from one value to another. Principles of ownership and value are at the heart of the classic car market. With a little help, the cars start easily, and many are driven to their destination. Others need alternative means of transport. This 1948 Talbot Lago has had owners in Australia, America, and Britain. It was last sold for £24,000 in 1981. Today, its reserve price is £350,000. Raced by the famous driver Louis Chiron, it won the 1949 French Grand Prix. The once triumphant winner is now lifted and hoisted, transported from one owner to another, changing hands and gaining in value. Having always remained in one family, this 1926 Sunbeam Supersports has extensive documentation of a fascinating history. It is new on the market and will attract immense interest because it has no benchmark price. Known as the International, this 1933 1.5-litre Le Mans was the first Aston ever to be entered for the Mille Miglia. A collision, firstly with a stone post and then with a house, resulted in retirement from the race.
Yeah, okay, Ken.
Of the 77 cars about to be sold, 27 are without reserve. This is perhaps the clearest sign of panic in the marketplace. The truth is that nobody really knows anymore which cars are worth what. That is why today's auction is of crucial importance to the international car market. The managing director of Coys appears confident. Douglas Jameson.
The market is not as strong as it has been. I mean, economically, things are bad anyway. We've got some very good cars and some very good reserves. The answer is to Wednesday night will tell. Most of our buyers are in the south or southeast, and there's a lot of Europeans coming over, so I think we should be okay for the people. We've done these for several years now, and there's no point in being nervous. It's too late. It's either going to happen or not happen.
Whether it does or doesn't is of great importance to those whose livelihood depends on the buying and selling of classic cars. All of these preparations cost thousands of pounds. It's an investment the auctioneers hope will pay off. Those in the know are surely familiar with the ups and downs of the classic car market. What do dealers look for at an auction? Aston Martin specialist Paul Michaels.
It's always important to go to the big auctions, and Coys hold them about 4 times a year. Last week we had Sotheby's, and that was quite informative and showed an actual first time for quite a long time a rise in the market. If we can get to a point where the market is seen to have bottomed out, I think then people will be less nervous about going back in. The difficulty recently has been that nobody's known where bottom is, so they've been nervous to bring back funds in case they may be 10% over what next week's price is. With a couple of successful auctions establishing a bottom price, then I think the market will move forward in an orderly fashion.
Market movements are dependent on hard sales. With prices in turmoil, it's surprising that people still want to spend money on classic cars. The people about to fill these seats have varied reasons for being here. Auctioneer Peter Bainbridge.
At an event like this, I think it's well spread, truly, between the collector, the investor, and the dealer, from all parts of the globe.
Some people have followed auction trends and will be able to evaluate the ups and downs of the cars in front of them. Some are driven by a passion which has little to do with the market. Others are only looking for bargain basement prices and future profits. Despite the current economic climate, the auctioneer is positive.
I think it would be silly to be outrageously optimistic, but we've got a great selection of cars. We've done a lot of homework prior to the auction, and I think that's going to reflect in the sale this evening. My lords, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. We've got a selection for you tonight, this evening, an exciting array of cars, many at no reserve. Could all bidders go to the accounts office downstairs after they have been successful in purchasing a car? It is important that we know this evening just what your intentions are with respect to settlement and what your transport requirements might be. Lastly, all cars that are not collected by 5 p.m. tomorrow will be transported to store a car in Newport Pagnell at a cost of £100.
This secret store-a-car location is home to many cars prior to auction. Despite its farmyard appearance, it is in fact an air-conditioned retreat for cars whose relationship with their owners is less than personal. It's a bizarre business. Director of Store-a-Car, Alan Cohen.
A typical client of ours would be a Hollywood film producer or director who may come in here 5 or 6 times a year, and he requires his car at London Airport or at a London hotel. It's our duty to get it there. He wants it in Aberdeen, we have to get it to Aberdeen. Or we have a client who's got a car in Geneva, we have to fly somebody over to Geneva and pick his car up, or anywhere on the continent. And we do that on a regular basis. But mainly our customers are business people who look at a car for 2 reasons. One is an investment, or perhaps because they want to just look after it and because they think that they one day will drive it on a regular basis.
During the car's stay, their ownership may change. Sold at auction by one investor to another, yet returned by the new owner for indefinite storage. Another fate for some of these cars is repossession by finance houses. A Ferrari stored here cost its owner £1 million in borrowed money. As interest rates rose, he could no longer afford the repayments, and so the finance company reclaimed the car, which the market now values at less than half the purchase price. Storage under these conditions may seem an uneventful and rather humiliating life for a sought-after classic, bought and sold over the telephone unseen and rarely driven. Many are simply entries in a balance ledger. But there are moments of activity for some of them. The Store-a-Car Gold Service is perhaps the final ignominy. It may not have been on the road for several months, but this gull-wing Mercedes has traveled many miles. But for a number of cars here, the only movement will be a return journey on the back of a trailer to and from the auction house.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to start the evening now. We are through on the phones, I hope. Yes, we're through on the phones. We have a 1962 Austin Healey Mark II for you. Good example of the classic British sports car. To start the evening, where are you going to open the bidding, please? No reserve. Let's go for £5,000. 5,000 to open the bidding, please. No reserve. It's got to be sold. Let's see, 2,000, not a penny less. Come on now. Thank you. 2,000 no bid. 3,000 anywhere now. Got a bit of 2,000.
But there are people whose reasons for buying a classic car have nothing to do with investment. Factors like looks and appearance do appeal to certain collectors.
I think there are people who buy cars from an aesthetic viewpoint, most certainly. Not the dealer. The dealer, I think, buys for profit, of course. But there are plenty of collectors who I think have an eye for style and design. We're always pleased to see them here. Got a bit of £6,000. It's £6,000. It's going to be sold. It's £6,000. Any more bids then? 7,000. Oh, it's an interesting ploy, isn't it? 6, thank you. 7 now, please.
The criteria for buying are varied and diverse.
7 anywhere now. Got a bit of 7. 7, thank you. 7,000.
For me, a classic car is one that at the time it was new, it was very much sought after and perceived to have a new R factor. And then as time goes by, the people who probably couldn't afford it when that was new suddenly start chasing it in its older life.
As well as a very rare Aston Martin Zagato, this collection also includes a DB4, DB5, and this 1970s Oval. It represents more than investment. It represents a passion.
Cadbury's Twirl. 2 folded fingers coated in delicious Cadbury's chocolate. Take 5 for a Cadbury's Twirl.
When you join the Navy, we know exactly how you'll feel. Green. No, not seasick, but out of your depth.
An aircraft inbound towards the ship. Like this one. Where?
Validate it, wait for the results, and then compare.
Pretty soon, though, you'll start to settle in. You'll learn new skills. Discover hidden talents. See new places. Make new mates. And earn new qualifications. In no time, you'll feel different. More decisive, more confident, less green. You may not notice the change, but when you go home, we think you'll see a huge difference. Join the Navy and see the world differently.
AA AutoQuote could find you a better deal on your car insurance. For a free quote, call free on 0800 444 777 tomorrow.
The easiest way to pick up a classic sports car is to collect the vouchers with Shell. Start your collection now.
Every month we interview 10,000 customers.
For a start, phone boxes that don't work.
Over the last few years, we've made sure that at any one time, more than 9 out of 10 of them do work.
You didn't mend it when you said you would.
Actually, we get to nearly 90% of line faults within 1 working day. And if we don't restore your service by the end of the next working day, you can claim a month's line rental for every extra day you wait.
It's the charges on the phone bill I can't figure out.
We've been working on that, and we can now offer 3 out of 4 customers a choice of itemised bills.
We've been listening to you and turning the negatives into positives. We're now able to make the BT commitment, a complete set of service standards for you, the customer. Here it is. I'd like you to read it.
The BT Commitment, a full set of service standards addressing your concerns. For your copy, call us free on 0800 800 885.
This collection was also inspired by a passion. It belongs to an Italian who enjoys driving Porsches, Jaguars and Lancias. But amongst them, the car that really excites is a Fiat 500 Jolly. Managing Director of Pirelli UK, Sandro Veronesi.
It's a very nice car to drive. You can drive 5 people, take 5 people around. I used to go to take my kids to school with this one. As you can see, it's got some particular features like the mahogany bumpers, mahogany around here, now the steering wheel, rev counter, and that sort of things.
For Sandro, it's this car's history that gives it value. It supposedly belonged to Agnelli, head of motor giant Fiat, who used it on his yacht. The story goes that the car is right-hand drive, so he could be next to the pavement when he parked.
I wouldn't bet on it, but it's a nice story. When I buy a car, I like to have time to test the car, to talk to the owners, possibly. I bought them certainly not as an investment, but because I like them. And then as a second priority, I expect when I sell them, if I ever sell them, to make some money.
This car would certainly make some money if sold today. One of the world's most expensive cars, and certainly one of the most beautiful. But the owner is modest about its value. Pink Floyd drummer Nick Mason.
I think the idea of cars for investment, as in with most things for investment, unless you have a passion for it, you're likely to be wasting your time and you're likely to buy things that are really not that good. I mean, some of my cars have become valuable, but if I'd been advising someone else as an investment, I would never have bought those cars. I'd have bought the wrong cars, in fact. Taking, say, perhaps the Ferrari GTO, which is a really good example of a car I have no interest in valuing. I bought the car 12, 15 years ago because I loved it. I lusted after it. I actually have a photograph of that car that I took when I was a student and went to Goodwood to watch club racing in the early 60s. And I took that the picture of the car because I just thought it was the most beautiful car in the world. And it was only when I bought the car, sort of 15 years later, that I realized that it was the same car because the number plate had changed and so on and so forth. And frankly, I get extremely depressed by the whole business of the car values being touted around. I mean, what's happened, things fortunately are sort of settling down. For about 10 years, I was thought of as an eccentric lunatic. And then for 2 years, I was thought of as a brilliant investor, and now I'm thought of as an eccentric lunatic again because people have talked about the sort of £10 million car, and I think now you can safely say that that's a joke, that people are no longer interested in cars at that sort of money.
Initially bought out of a love of racing, Nick's cars now form part of a successful film and television props hire company. Cars like this 1934 Aston LM18 date back to the days when the British sports car was virtually invincible. This Maserati is known as a birdcage because of its complex, almost wire-like structure, designed to reduce the weight of the car. This D-Type is one of the great racing success stories produced by Jaguar. Its in-house styling could easily be mistaken for the flowing lines of a Pininfarina-designed Ferrari. But a man with so many cars surely has a favorite.
There's no such thing as a perfect car, but what it should have are a number of qualities in varying amounts. It should be beautiful to look at. It should be a wonderful thing to drive. And ideally have history as well. And I think if you can have those three aspects to a car, you're getting somewhere close to my idea of the perfect car.
Of course, some cars are more perfect than others.
This is possibly the worst car in the collection. It's a Trabant. And the reason I've got it is because I get fascinated by a particular item of sort of motoring history, really. And this is quite an important car because it's East European, and it's incredibly badly made, and it's ecologically very unsound, although there is a belief that the car itself may be biodegradable, because there seems to be a lot of sort of papier-mâché in it.
Whatever the history or qualities of these cars, for Nick Mason there is only one overriding factor.
I like driving the cars, that's why I bought them. It's nice to get pleasure from looking at them as well, but a car at rest is actually not as beautiful as a car in motion.
In some cases, the classic has rather less poetry than motion. This car is being driven by one of the country's leading vintage Bentley dealers, Stanley Mann.
The car on my left here is a 1929 3-litre vintage Bentley with an 8-litre vintage Bentley engine. So there are no parts in it that predate over 1930. The car was built using pure steels. The chassis is made of the best steel that money could buy. The radiator is solid nickel silver, it's not plated. Under the bonnet is an engine built with a slide ruler and a lot of brains and very little in the way of what we would now have as a computer.
The craftsmanship and materials required to make a car of such high quality today would bring with it a price tag of £500,000. This particular car is now valued at twice that. What exactly do you get for your money? A design? The metal? Rarity? The sum of its parts? Or an old leathery smell?
The value of a Bentley is the fun that you get out of it. Money-wise, to find a good Bentley owner, he probably wouldn't tell you what he paid for it, and he's not really that interested in selling it. It's a bit like owning a Spitfire, tremendous fun to fly, but you could fly in a modern jet more comfortably. But to own something like this, the blood boils, everything starts happening. The adventure starts just starting the car up.
Bentleys are the blue chip of classic cars.
If it's fun to drive, somebody else will want to own it as well. So the price will always keep going up. They were expensive when they were made, and they're going to continue being expensive because they're still a practical, usable, fun machine.
These pre-war cars are traditionally known as vintage. Values do not fluctuate as much as cars which have only recently been termed classic. One very special Bentley recently became the focus of a great deal of controversy after it sold for £10 million.
There goes the giant
Old Number 1 crashed in 1932, killing its driver and causing extensive damage to the car. The judge ruled that the car, despite much restoration, was indeed the original. Vendor Ed Hubbard.
Old Number 1, undoubtedly the most famous racing Bentley of all time. Famous for her results, and recently famous for a most interesting court case. Having sold the car and made a suitable contract, I received a letter saying that the car was a fake. And of course this caused me to go to court to protect the car's reputation and also to protect my reputation. After 12 days in court, with all the available experts, with the archives from the Bentley Drivers Club, the car was proven legally and officially to be what all enthusiasts, all Bentley enthusiasts know it is. And here she is today, a car with a wonderful history. And when we're talking about the history of a car, we're talking about probably in a car like this, the most important part of the car. We're not talking about just the metal, any more than we're talking about the paint or just the paint and the canvas on a famous painting. We're talking about the history, the continuous history, and that's the value. The metal, relatively unimportant. The history makes this car so very different from other cars.
With such constant modification, authenticating cars is clearly a difficult business.
If the judge had decided this car was not Old Number 1 because of all the changes that have taken place in its racing life, then there would hardly be, and possibly not even be, one original car in the world that had raced. Because I can't imagine even practicing and preparing for your first race without making some basic changes to the car as the way it came out of the factory.
The case of Old Number 1 has had an effect on all classic car collectors.
160, Peter. He wants 160, Peter. 160. Yes or no, Peter?
Provenance is the fine art term now in common use amongst classic car collectors. It means the history of the car from manufacture through ownership, races and collections. It is this that gives a car its value, both to individuals and to the market.
Thank you. 175,000. 180. Thank you.
But for some, the market will always be the only true guide to the value of individual cars.
90,000, please. 190, please.
Just as a record-breaking sale of a Van Gogh painting will have a knock-on effect on all Van Goghs, so the sale of a Bentley Continental will have a knock-on effect on all post-war Bentleys. This is why some classic car collectors remain obsessed with the fluctuations in market prices.
199, sir. Yes, sir. 199. It's 199,000. Any further bids this evening? All down at 199 then. Your car, sir. 199. A lovely car.
Having once belonged to Rex Harrison, the new owner of this Bentley S1 Continental has bought some great metal and some fabulous history. It's also a fabulous markup for Coys, who take 10% from both buyer and seller. The Talbot failed to reach its reserve, but later sold for £380,000, making the auctioneers a cool 78,000. The Sunbeam sold for £54,000, 100 times the manufacturer's 1926 list price. With the party over, the investors, collectors and dealers drive home in their modern BMWs and Volvos. Their latest acquisitions await collection and long-term storage. That is, until the next auction.
If you'd like to know more about classic cars, Channel 4 has produced a guide that can be purchased for £3 by cheque or postal order, payable to Channel 4. The address you need to send it to is this: Classic Cars, P.O. Box 4000, London W3 6XJ.